So, a lot of resellers are up in arms about this, and rightfully so. We're talking about the new promotions, listings, ad fees. I hope I'm saying that right. But a lot of you have been seeing this all over social media, especially on YouTube. You've been seeing a lot of resellers talk about how come January, eBay is adding, I guess, additional fees or attribution fees. All right. So I'm going to get into it because I have a lot of notes on this. And a few of you have asked me questions specifically about this new ad fee, promotions fee policy change. So we're going to break it down in today's episode. And I'm going to share with you some of the things that I think about this and how we can navigate through this as jewelry resellers and how we can maybe figure out a way to kind of still make the sales we want to make the money we want to make, even though all of these changes are happening. All right, so that's the direction we're going in today, jewelry friends. Hello, my name is Desiree, and you know that I am your jewelry reselling bestie. So, there's been a lot of talk and there's been a lot of reaction, a lot of heated debates about what eBay is planning to do. And I know a majority of us do sell our jewelry on eBay. So I wanted to do a dedicated episode to this topic because there's a lot of questions. Some people are very confused. I'm going to give you a little spoiler. If you do not promote your listings on eBay, at all, then this probably will not apply to you. Because I know there's a lot of jewelry resellers who don't do any type of promotions at all. They just list their stuff on whatever platform and pretty much hope for the best. Now, I'm hoping that a lot of us are a little bit more proactive than that, but I understand that that's the way a lot of people do it. So if that is you, you may still want to listen to this because you never know, things may change, and it's good to always have an understanding about what's going on, especially if you are using eBay. And you also want to be aware of what your options are or what you can do, maybe what you want to stop doing. So, before we get into that, you know, I like to always remind you to check out our website, jewelryresellerspodcast.com, because over there you can opt in to the newsletter. Remember, I relaunched the newsletter. So it comes out every Friday, and that is where I am sharing a lot of behind the scenes information, some helpful articles, and some tips, tricks, strategies, and whatever else I think may be useful to us as jewelry resellers. All right, so you can find that at jewelryresellerspodcast.com. When you opt into the newsletter, I will send you a instant downloadable copy of the list I created, which is the 20 best-selling vintage jewelry brands that I think all resellers should know. So if you're interested, the link will be in the show notes of this episode. All right, so let's go ahead and get into today's topic. So, you know, I'm not going to make this a rant, but I am going to articulate to the best of my ability what's happening. So those of you who are not familiar, a lot of you already are familiar with what changes are going to be taking place come January as it relates to eBay. And so what I want to do is kind of help you figure this out for you and for your business, because for some of you, you may not do anything different. And for others of us, we may try to figure out, well, how can we change things? How can we maybe add some other things in so we can offset some of these costs if we are deciding to do promoted listings? And I don't really do a whole lot of promoted listings on eBay. I have done them in the past. So I'm not going to say that, you know, I'm either all in or all out as it relates to this, but I'm going to share with you, like I said, the information as accurately as I possibly can. And I'm also going to have some links in the show notes too. So that way, if you want to read this for yourself or study it, or maybe, you know, make sure that I communicated it correctly, I'll have those links available. I'm also going to throw up a couple of things on the screen so that way we can look at it together. Okay. All right. So Let's see. Now, this is probably going to be a two-part episode because in today's episode, we're going to talk about this promoted listings fee policy change. And then in part two, I'm going to share with you some marketing strategies that I guarantee you've never heard of that can help you maybe even circumvent some of this stuff that eBay is doing. All right. So make sure you are subscribed. Make sure you turn your notifications on because I think it's going to be a very fun and interesting part two. Okay, so let's get into it. Let me explain the update just in regular plain English so we all understand. As of January 13th, 2026, eBay's new promoted listings general strategy means that you will pay a promotion fee if any buyer clicks your ad and if any buyer later buys that same item within 30 days, even if the second buyer never clicked the ad. All right, this is the part that a lot of resellers are upset about because obviously it just looks like eBay is trying to tack on more fees without actually adding anything of value to justify these additional fees. All right, this has already been rolled out in the UK and Australia, and now it's coming to the United States and Canada effective January 13th, 2026. All right, so let's take a look at this article here. And this is by or on the website valueaddedresource.net. And I thought this was the most simplest breakdown of the new fee policy. And I wanted us to look at it together because that way we can get a very clear understanding of exactly what's happening. All right. So, like we talked about, this is starting on January 13th, 2026 on eBay.com, eBay Canada. It's already in place on eBay UK. Is that Denmark? I'm not quite sure. Australia, like I said. So eBay will report an attributed sale from a general campaign when a buyer purchases the same item that was featured in the ad that was clicked on by any buyer in the most recent 30 days. So let's say you have an item that you have promoted. If somebody sees it, clicks on your item, they don't buy it, well, that starts the clock for the 30 days because within the next 30 days, if somebody else sees your item and if they happen to click on it and purchase it, even if they found your item organically, you're still going to be charged that promotion fee, and it's called an attribution fee. At least that's what I'm understanding. So looking at this article on Value Added Resource, it says once the new model goes into effect, sellers will no longer see halo or direct attribution for promoted listings general ads. There will only be the new attribution policy. All right. So this is, I mean, I'm not happy about this, even though I don't use um, promoted listings on eBay. I think that there's some ways that this new policy, I mean, it's going to hurt us as resellers because it's going to cost us more. But what I don't like is like there's not a way to really track, and there's not a whole lot of transparency as it relates to knowing when somebody is clicking on our ad, whether or not they found it organically or not. And so that's the part that's a little fuzzy for me. Now, like I said, I don't use promoted listings, so I don't know if eBay gives us those analytics or that data as it relates to where the person came from when they click on our item. Like, is there some way to track that if somebody found it organically? Like, if somebody just literally typed in exactly maybe the title of your listing and they found your listing and they bought the item, is there a way to track those organic clicks or those organic buyers that just show up because they're specifically looking for your item? Now, I know this is This is frustrating because I know a lot of us already think that eBay takes, a lot of fees, and I guess that's debatable. But for the most part, a lot of people are saying that this fee is just not justified, and I have to agree. Now, let's talk about why this matters, because it changes ad fee attribution from click to sale by same buyer to any click, any sale. All right. So if somebody clicks on it and somebody buys it, doesn't matter how they found it, you're going to be charged a fee, even if it's completely two different buyers. So this means that one click can trigger multiple fees on a multi-quantity listing. So let's say you have 10 necklaces, all of the same necklaces for sale, and you have a quantity of 10. Well, somebody buys it, you're going to be charged that fee. The next person that buys it, you're going to be charged that fee. So you can be charged that fee up to 10 times or however many as it relates to the quantity of the item that you have for sale. And that's another thing because, again, what if somebody's just researching? What if somebody's just browsing, and they click on your listing just to see what it is, just to get more details? So I find this very frustrating as a seller. And I don't know, like everybody else, I'm not happy about it. And I'm probably even more motivated not to do promoted listings because of this change. So there is not really any way to track if a buyer finds your item organically. You'll be charged the fee anyway. All right, that's what eBay's doing. Now, the other thing that I don't like about this is that there really is nothing in place to prevent click abuse. And what I mean by click abuse is, let's say your competitor goes on to your page or into your eBay store and just starts clicking on all of your listings because they know that you promote them. And so you're going to be charged the fee just because your competitor got happy and decided to, said, oh, let me just click on every listing in their store. That way, if any of these items sell, they're going to be charged the attribution fee. So there's no way to prevent click abuse. And I don't see anybody talking about that as it relates to this. I did see in one video where the reseller talked about, what about for those of us who are doing research and we're clicking on other items that are listed for sale, not because we want to buy it, but because we want to get information because, we're doing research. Maybe we're selling something similar. Maybe we just want to see, how their description is worded, whatever the case may be. But this really hurts the sellers because a lot of people do research on eBay, not just other resellers, but collectors, people who are, just trying to learn more about certain particular items. And so this is going to hurt those sellers because people are going to be clicking on their listings, even when they're just looking for information with no intention of ever purchasing the item. And like I said, there's nothing in place to prevent that. eBay, doesn't care. So, that's something that I think is very frustrating and leaves the door open to abuse. But here's the thing: eBay is going to benefit because they're going to be able to collect the fees. So, why would they, put something in place to prevent that? Because they're not going to, because they're going to make money every time somebody clicks. All right, so now the next thing I have in my notes here is why resellers should care about this. And I think I've kind of already covered that. Jewelry margins are often thinner than a lot of sellers admit, and additional ad fees could wipe out some of the profit or really hurt, your profit margin. I already talked about this: multi-quantity or variation listings like similar gold chains or earrings become magnets for this fee, right? So if you're selling multiple quantities of something or maybe something in different variations and people are clicking on it because they say, oh, I want to see what the gold looks like. Oh, I want to see what the silver tone looks like or whatever. You're going to be charged every time you make a sale on that one listing. You're going to be charged that additional promotions listings ad fee. So It's like paying a finder's fee to eBay for something you sold on your own. And I think that's the part that feels really icky and feels really shady because, a lot of us do a lot of work to generate traction to our stores and to our listings. And so now eBay is going to take a cut of some of that if we are doing these promoted listings. All right. So think about this because you don't have to do promoted listings. You really don't. I know sellers who never do, and they still make pretty good money selling on eBay. Now, could they make more with the promoted listings? Probably, but there's no really guaranteed way to know unless you test it for yourself. You test a certain time period running promoted listings, and then you test another time period without, and then compare your sales. But there's a lot of variables that go in when you do that. So that may or may not actually work, and it may or may not give you accurate data. So again, you're going to have to figure out if this makes sense for you and if this makes sense for your business. So when do you want to use promotions, and maybe when do you not want to use promotions? Well, here's the thing. And I created a little chart, and I'm going to throw it up on the screen so you can take a look at it. So if there's a lot of competition for what you're selling, I really think that's the only time you need to do promotions or pay for the promoted, the promotions listing. I think if you have something so rare or one of a kind that would attract organic buyers anyway, I don't think you need to run promoted for those particular types of items. And those of us who are selling jewelry, a lot of our stuff will fall into that category where there's just a few of them listed on eBay. You don't really need to promote those because if somebody is looking for that and there's not a whole lot of them on there, they're going to find that particular item organically. I also have here, if you're doing short-term liquidation sales, so let's say you have a lot of jewelry you want to move quickly, that could warrant paying the promotions fee. All right, because there's a lot of other sellers maybe selling something similar, and you're just trying to get this stuff sold as quickly as possible. You want to come up, at the top of search results, then that could warrant also too you paying the promoted listings. All right. So those are the two instances where I think it actually makes sense. Number one, if it's a highly, competitive item where there's a lot of them on there and the exposure really, really matters in order to get that item sold, I think a promotions listing fee would be justified. But again, if it's a one of a kind rare item that would attract organic buyers anyway, I don't think you need it. All right. I really don't. But again, this could be a item by item thing that you figure out. So, I don't want to say, oh, everybody should do this or everybody shouldn't do this, but that's kind of a guideline for you to figure out, does it make sense for me? Does it make sense for this particular item? All right. So now let's talk about how to get visibility without necessarily paying for promos. All right. I kind of talked about this in last week's episode where if your jewelry isn't selling, I was sharing some tips and strategies of some things that you can do. So if you have not watched that episode, I will link it for you so you can check it out. But it's kind of the stuff we already know. All right. Number one, you want to refresh your listings regularly. Now, you don't have to do an overhaul of every listing in your store, but maybe you tweak the title. Maybe you upload some new, better, clearer photos. All right. Because when you do that, it re-triggers eBay's search crawl, right? And it kind of refreshes and reawakens your listing in the algorithm. You also want to optimize your titles for buyer searches. Okay, you want to make sure that you are creating titles in a structure that buyers are actually looking for that particular item. And if you need help with this, I created a tool that literally will do this for you. It's called Jewelry Bestie, and you can try it, and it will literally write optimized titles for you. and descriptions. So it saves you a lot of work there. You also want to fill out every item specific. I know this is very tedious, but fill out as much as you can because it will work in your favor and it helps you fill more slots as it relates to eBay's algorithm, right? So the more hooks you have in the water, so to speak, the higher likelihood of your item showing up in search versus somebody who does not have any of the item specifics filled out. You also want to encourage engagement. Ask watchers to favorite or to message you if they have any questions. Now, I probably would not do this, all the time, but sometimes people they will watch something, and if you send them a message saying, "Hey, if you have any questions about this item or whatever," or maybe you want to shoot them an offer, depending on how you do it, that could work, right? Because engagement is always good. eBay likes to see that people are interested and that you are trying to get the item sold. And then I have use external traffic, post your listings elsewhere. I've talked about this many times. You can post your listings on Pinterest, Instagram, maybe even in some Facebook groups, anywhere across your own social media. Be careful with certain Facebook groups because a lot of them do not allow you to spam your listings. All right. But you want to make sure that you are sharing your listings outside of eBay so people can find them or people can look at what you're selling and follow your store or maybe save some of the items that you have available. Let's see. Bundle slow movers. I've talked about this. You can create small lots or themed bundles because these new listings get a visibility boost in the algorithm for eBay. And we already know this one, my last tip, which is to list daily. Even if you just list one item a day, don't list junk just for the sake of listing. But if you can list daily, it really does help the visibility of your other listings or the visibility of your eBay store if you do have one. All right. Active shops do stay in the rotation and the search results a little bit longer because eBay likes to see that engagement, likes to see that activity. All right. So even if you just list one item a day, or maybe you draft a whole bunch of items and you publish one listing a day for a week or a month or whatever you do, it's only going to help boost your visibility in search results on eBay. Okay. All right. So I hope that everything I shared with you today was not too confusing and was not too overwhelming. And I'm hoping that it gave you some ideas of what you can do and how you want to move forward and how you want to plan, as we move into the new year, because, things are going to get interesting, I think, in 2026 as it relates to resellers. All right. More people are going to be doing reselling come January because that's usually the time when people start new side hustles. People are cleaning out stuff because they got a bunch of new stuff for Christmas. And so they're going to be selling some of their old items, on eBay. And so we're going to see a lot of activity come January. All right. So, how you're going to offset these new fee changes is going to depend a lot on how you run your business, what your goals are, and what you are willing and not willing to do. All right. Because some of us like to kickstart our business in January, come Q1. And then others of us like to take a break because we were so busy in Q4 that we need to decompress a little bit in Q1 because, you were just cranking and grinding and making those sales that, you're like, whoa, I need a little bit of a breather. So you're going to have to figure out what works for you, what doesn't, like I said, and what your plan is, coming up in the next few months, because I think we all have some decisions to make. And it's going to be very interesting as we watch how things change, within our economy, within our community. What changes in our lives, could impact our reselling business to one degree or another. So, starting January 13th, 2026, you could be paying ad fees for organic sales. So that's really the bottom line. And before you opt in, you want to ask yourself, can I afford to give eBay another 10% or whatever the percentage is? Think about that. I know that there's a lot of resellers who are trying to organize boycotts or who are just going to turn off promoted listings on this date. I mean, I don't want to recommend doing one thing over another because this is very individual. But I do want you to, and I always say this too, think about your business outside of eBay, right? Because so many people put all of their eggs in the eBay basket and they never think about or consider anything else. And I've said this many times, it's always good to have options. It doesn't mean you have to leave eBay completely, but there's other platforms out there. There's other ways to sell your jewelry. There's other ways to be visible and to get your items seen. We don't have to depend on what eBay does or does not do in order to make our money. And I think that's really the point I want to drive home today is, don't give any platform all of that type of power and control over you and your business, because at the end of the day, eBay is looking out for their pockets. And so as individual sellers, resellers, we need to do the same thing. At the end of the day, it's about what is best for us, what is going to make us the most money, and potentially what is going to save us the most money. That's really what matters here. It doesn't matter, like I said, what eBay does, whether it's right, whether it's wrong, whether it's fair. Um, we just need to be confident and secure in knowing that we have options and we can pretty much create our own rules, within certain parameters of how we operate our business. That's really, really what I want to communicate today. So let's see. Let me make sure I don't have anything else I want to share with you. All right. The future of reselling belongs to people who build their own traffic, right? That's always, I think, what we should be doing. And I know it's not easy, and I know what works for one may not work for another, but you always want to think about, how can I get more people seeing what I sell? How can I get more eyes, get my business more visible, right? How do I show up in front of the people who want what I'm selling? That's really what matters. Okay. So, like I said, next week, or part 2 of today's episode, I am going to show you some guerrilla marketing tactics, all right? So you can get free visibility for your business, and it's going to give you some new ideas. I'm so excited about this. I really am, because it's going to be fun. And I guarantee you've never seen what I'm going to share in next week's episode. I promise you that this is going to be something that's totally different, totally unique, and it's really going to hopefully give you some creative ideas. I mean, I want you to really tap into some of the ideas I'm going to share on how to, do some, um, what's the right word? Like out of the box thinking marketing strategies. I think that's the best way to put it. All right. So that's coming next week. So that's, let's see, that's going to be it for this episode, jewelry friends. So let me know your thoughts. What are you thinking about this new promoted listings ad attribution changes coming in January? What are your thoughts? I really want to hear everything, the good, the bad, the ugly. I really want to get a conversation and a dialogue going about this, because I'm more interested in what your plans are, what your decisions are going to be. Like, what are you going to do next? Are you going to set up something new? Are you going to offset something? Are you going to try something different? Are you going to move to a different platform? Are you going to create your own website? Let me know. Let me know what your plans are, because I think it'll inspire other resellers. It'll help us feel too like, we're not battling the big Goliath of eBay. We can win this in our own way. All right. So, like I said, that's going to be it for today's episode. So I hope you guys enjoyed this. And if there is anything I got wrong, or maybe I didn't, explain it correctly or whatever, please feel free to correct me in the comments, because I'm always open to correction. I don't know everything. And sometimes I don't know what I don't know. So I appreciate any type of feedback or input that you guys give. Okay. So thank you so much for spending this time with me. And I will see you next week with part 2.